In the golden days of Hollywood, there were men considered the perfect image of a gentleman. With deep, warm voices, hypnotic eyes, and flawless looks, they made millions of women swoon during the 1950s. Yet behind that glamorous spotlight lay a hidden cost. Many had to pay with their own bodies. Some were told to strip down right inside hotel rooms. Some appeared to serve cocktails at midnight, but in truth were forced into much more. Others were secretly filmed, blackmailed, and condemned to live in silence for fear that one single leak would destroy their careers. At least 25 A-list stars of Hollywood endured such humiliation. They were all faces once carved onto the Walk of Fame. But who were they? And why did these top stars, men who seemed to have it all, have to sell themselves at the very start of their careers? Today's story will reveal everything. Among them was James Dean, the rebel angel and the secret deals of the summer of 1951. At that time, James Dean was only 20 years old. Freshly arrived from Indiana to Los Angeles, he had no connections, no money, and no auditions lined up. The only things he carried were a hauntingly strange face and an innocence that was easy to control. That was exactly why he caught the attention of secret talent scouts at the Chateau Marmont Hotel, once nicknamed the after-hours casting office for Hollywood's most powerful men. According to a bartender who once worked at the ground floor bar, James Dean attended a private party where young men were not called by their names, but by numbers. Dean was number 6. He had sad eyes and messy curls. People liked him a lot, but above all he was quiet. He did not ask questions. He did not fight back. The first man to pull James Dean out of the shadows was Rogers Brackett, a seasoned theater director from New York. He was not only a lover but also a sponsor. Yet the price Dean had to pay was steep. Actress Christine White, who lived near Brackett's apartment, recalled, "I more than once heard Dean crying in the bathroom at 3 in the morning." The next morning, however, James Dean would still walk onto the set as if nothing had ever happened. His career began to take shape after a series of late-night visits. He was escorted to lavish parties, where cocktails were only the surface and other unspoken services were expected. On one occasion, he was asked to spend the night with an older investor in exchange for a television role on CBS. Dean did not refuse. He knew that one appearance on screen could free him from washing dishes in that small diner near Sunset Boulevard. A close friend later revealed that Dean had once been secretly filmed inside a penthouse on Wilshire Boulevard while entertaining a studio executive. That recording became a weapon, ensuring he never dared to escape the invisible chains of power surrounding him. From then on, James Dean no longer controlled his own life. What he wore, where he went, even who he was seen with, were all arranged by faceless handlers. Many believe that this pressure pushed him into becoming increasingly distant, cold, and suspicious, as though he was constantly being watched. In the end, Dean had exchanged his body for fame. But what he gained was brief and tragic. After only 3 defining roles, he died in a mysterious car crash in 1955, just as his career was beginning. Marlon Brando is remembered as the man who slept his way to fame in Hollywood history. At a press gathering in 1975, he openly declared, "I slept with anyone who could give me a role. Male or female, it made no difference, as long as they had power." This shocking statement was later cited by Vanity Fair in 2001 as proof of the hidden darkness within American cinema. Back in the 1940s, Brando was still struggling on small New York stages. At that time, veteran director George Cukor paid him $300 a week to attend late-night rehearsals inside his Beverly Hills mansion. It was Cukor who later phoned Elia Kazan to recommend Brando, paving the way for his legendary role as Stanley Kowalski in A Streetcar Named Desire. But Brando did not stop there. He pursued directors, producers, and even journalists as long as they could bring him closer to the spotlight. In a diary discovered after his death, Brando listed 14 men who had supported him with both financial and physical favors. Among them was Jack Warner, the powerful studio head of Warner Brothers, who once shielded Brando from a sex scandal in 1953, allowing him to keep his role in Julius Caesar. Yet not everyone was as fortunate as Brando. One actor, once mentored by him, stepped into those same hidden rooms, only never to come back out. Sal Mineo, the handsome young star who played James Dean's friend in Rebel Without a Cause, rose to fame as quickly as he fell. Behind the bright lights, he carried a past he could never openly reveal. In 1955, when he was only 16, Mineo was invited to the home of a powerful producer for what was described as a private dialogue session. He later confided to a friend that he had been told he would get the role only if he proved he was soft enough. That night he stayed, and by the next morning his name appeared on the official audition list. Mineo never denied what had happened. In a 1973 television interview, which was later cut from broadcast, he spoke candidly, "In Hollywood, if you don't give them what they want, they will forget your name." After Dean's death, his own life began to unravel. Used and discarded, he eventually resorted to selling himself to survive. Reports suggested that he maintained secret arrangements with two directors in Palm Springs, exchanging sexual favors for minor roles in low-budget films. By the late 1960s, Mineo attempted to rebuild his career. He directed stage plays, worked on independent projects, and even began speaking about the hidden abuses of Hollywood. Just a week before his death, he warned a CBS reporter, "I have names, photos, tapes. If anything happens to me, go find them." On February 12, 1976, Sal Mineo was stabbed outside his apartment in West Hollywood. Police labeled the incident a robbery, yet his wallet was untouched, his watch still on his wrist, and his briefcase, rumored to contain the evidence he intended to reveal, was missing. His death became a grim reminder that in Hollywood, some truths could destroy a man before the world ever heard them. And among those who had once walked the same dark path stood another star, more beautiful and more famous, who lived in constant fear that the truth about his identity would one day be exposed. The fourth name was Rock Hudson, the gentleman escort behind closed doors. He was not only a Hollywood idol but also the prized attraction at private parties where no ordinary fan could ever enter. As early as the 1950s, when he was still a young hopeful at Universal, Hudson was placed on a secret list of rising pretty boys by Henry Wilson, the most powerful talent manager in Hollywood at the time, notorious for grooming actors straight from the bedroom. Hudson had it all: a sculpted body, a cinematic face, and a deep, alluring voice. Yet it was not his talent that secured his rise. In a studio memo leaked in 1989, a former assistant of Wilson had written by hand, "He is obedient, discreet, and always ready to accompany clients if I give the signal." To them, Hudson was the perfect companion. He never asked who he was meeting and never refused a request. From the Beverly Hills Hotel to lavish estates in Palm Springs, he always appeared with a polite smile, poured drinks, engaged in charming conversation, and, when required, stepped into a bedroom without hesitation. In a recorded phone call between Wilson and producer Ross Hunter, later published in Full Service by Scotty Bowers, one chilling line stood out: "He can handle two people in a night as long as no one takes photos. Otherwise, as many as they want." When Hudson became a sensation with Pillow Talk and Magnificent Obsession, He was not only adored by the press, but also transformed into the most expensive attraction at secret fundraising parties for studio moguls. Rumor had it that every time Hudson appeared at one of those exclusive gatherings, studios secured millions in hidden investments. After his death, a crumpled note was discovered among his belongings, containing just one haunting line: "I was never allowed to say no." And yet, Hudson was not alone. His old friend, once celebrated as Hollywood's golden gentleman, had lived under the same silence and secrecy. That man was Cary Grant, the perfect gentleman, the husband every woman dreamed of, or so the press declared. The truth, however, was far different. For nearly 2 decades at the start of his career, Grant lived with fellow actor Randolph Scott in a relationship that magazines coyly described as inseparable companions. At their Malibu mansion, the two men hosted private gatherings for directors, writers, and financiers. According to Scotty Bowers, Grant was not only the host but also the one arranging the exchanges. One cinematographer even recalled how Grant invited 3 directors into his home, disappeared upstairs with them, and just a week later was cast in the lead role of Bringing Up Baby. It did not stop there. A leaked Columbia Pictures memo from 1942 confirmed Grant's willingness to participate in after-hours studio activities, which included support for financial partners. Even after he became a household name, Grant never truly walked away. Confidential magazine once reported a 1955 incident in which he was seen leaving the Biltmore Hotel at 2 in the morning with an anonymous European investor, just days before signing on for Hitchcock's To Catch a Thief. Perhaps that explained why he married 5 times yet never found stability. Surrounded by tabloids and constant speculation, Cary Grant chose silence, knowing it was the only way to survive in a city built on illusions and traps. The 6th man on the list was Clark Gable, later crowned the King of Hollywood. Long before he became Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind, Gable was just a struggling youth in Oregon. In 1922, at the age of 21, he was cast out of his home for leaving school without work or direction. Homeless, he was taken in by William H. Wright, a well-known playwright of the era, under the guise of serving as a stage apprentice. In truth, Wright provided everything: clothes, food, shelter, and spending money, in exchange for the young man's obedience. A neighbor later recalled in a 1978 memoir that every Friday night Wright would entertain guests while Gable served drinks with a smile, before quietly slipping into a private room. After Wright's sudden death from a stroke, Gable left for Los Angeles carrying the connections of his former patron. Internal MGM records later revealed that he was once rescued from a gay scandal involving a male critic, when a powerful director intervened to ensure he could still audition for The Painted Desert. That moment marked the beginning of his rise toward becoming Hollywood's most celebrated king. The film opened the door for Gable, and soon he was a fixture in Hollywood. MGM mogul Louis B. Mayer once remarked with disdain, "Gable knows the price of a tuxedo, and the price you pay to wear it on the red carpet." Even at the height of his fame, Gable was rumored to maintain a complicated connection with director George Cukor, the openly gay filmmaker who first worked on Gone with the Wind. Some claimed Gable himself pushed for Cukor's removal from the project, fearing that secrets from their past might one day be revealed. While Gable buried his history, the next man endured his through endless compromise, night after night, just to keep his place in the spotlight, even if that stage existed only behind a bedroom door. That man was Gene Kelly, the dance legend with hidden steps. Before the fame, he worked as a dance instructor in Pittsburgh. In 1937, he moved to New York carrying 2 suitcases and a notebook filled with the names of producers passed to him by his students. One of the first he encountered was choreographer Charles Weidman, who invited him into a 6-month private training circle that, in truth, functioned as a covert audition ground for Broadway financiers. Another participant later revealed in Movie Line magazine, "We were not rehearsing. We were being tested for our bodies, our obedience, and our flexibility, both on and off the stage." Kelly passed the trial and was introduced to director Stanley Donen, who became not only his longtime collaborator but, according to whispers, his secret partner for nearly a decade. Yet even as his fame grew, Kelly could not escape the weight of studio pressure. He was frequently required to attend private engagements with wealthy investors. A Variety journalist once recalled seeing Kelly dance all night at a Bel Air mansion, with no stage, no cameras, only 3 powerful men and a contract waiting for his signature. In a 1959 letter to a close friend, Kelly confessed, "They want me to dance for them, but no one asks if I am tired, if I am sad, or if I am disgusted with myself." Perhaps that was why, behind the spotlight, he preferred rooms without mirrors, hallways without footsteps, and long, silent walks into the night. The 8th name was Tony Curtis, the perfect face, and the role one with flesh. Strikingly handsome, immaculately dressed, and blessed with a dazzling smile, Curtis embodied the Hollywood dream. Yet behind that polished exterior, he once whispered to a co-star, "To get roles, I did things never written in the script." In 1948, the young man from the Bronx walked into Universal's audition room. Within minutes, an elderly producer scanned him and asked a simple question, "Are you obedient?" It was no casual remark. According to journalist Robert Hoffler, author of The Man Who Invented Rock Hudson, Curtis once spent an entire week living in a casting director's private apartment in exchange for his role in Criss Cross, 1949, the part that first brought him recognition. Curtis never denied it. In a 1990 interview, later cut from broadcast, he admitted, "I knew how to use my face. It was my most valuable tool." By the time he starred in Some Like It Hot, the press had crowned him the heartthrob of the century. Yet in his private diary, Curtis wrote a chilling line, "If people knew what I did to get here, they would never think I was sweet again." Next was Anthony Perkins, remembered forever as Norman Bates in Psycho. With his tall frame, dreamy eyes, and delicate voice, he was exactly the type of man directors wanted to mold into their image. But before that breakthrough, Perkins survived in New York through arranged meetings at the Commodore Hotel. One of his early patrons was lawyer Roy Cohn, the most feared attorney of the era, who introduced him to media magnates searching for cultured, obedient boys to entertain. An industry insider told Confidential magazine in 1965, Perkins was rare. He made people feel they were the only one, and in return they gave him roles. It was Alfred Hitchcock himself who reportedly bought Perkins out of another studio contract, with an agreement that allegedly carried a hidden clause, keeping him intimately available during the making of Psycho. In letters revealed in 2007, Perkins confessed, "I am not afraid to die for a role. I am afraid people will learn how I had to die slowly to earn it." After Psycho, he became typecast, not only on screen but in life. In 1972, he told a psychologist, "I am no longer myself. I am a deal, a gift traded away." The 10th man was Dennis Hopper, the rebel who sold himself just to stay alive in the game. He came to embody the wild spirit of New Hollywood, covered in dust and defiance, yet he once confessed, "I sold my soul for a supporting role and a single night in Beverly Hills." By the mid-1960s, Hopper had hit bottom, blacklisted from major projects because of his reputation for violence, insubordination, and drug use. Even the rebel, it seemed, had a price. One night, he received an invitation to a private casting party inside a mansion on Mulholland Drive, an exclusive gathering where young men could trade their bodies for another chance on screen. In his memoir, director Nicholas Ray recalled how Hopper willingly spent the night with an older financier in exchange for a minor role in The Sons of Katie Elder, 1960, the part that revived his name in Hollywood. Actress Brooke Hayward, his former girlfriend, once admitted Dennis would endure anything, even humiliation, if it meant being back in front of a camera. The sacrifices never ended. In a 1983 interview with Rolling Stone, Hopper confessed, "I used to be cruel. But before that, I was just a good boy serving rich men so I could keep acting." But where is the line in these trades? The Next Man, once hailed as America's golden boy, proved that you do not sell yourself just once. You sell yourself piece by piece, until nothing remains. The 11th name was Rudolph Valentino, the original Latin lover, whose survival depended on nights no one dared speak of. Long before women across America adored him, Valentino had been forced to serve men simply to stay alive. According to Emily Leiter's 2003 biography, he worked briefly as a waiter in New York but was dismissed for being too friendly with male clients. Not long after, he was introduced to a hidden club called Mickey, where wealthy patrons could hire a young man for $50 a night. An acquaintance later told the Brooklyn Eagle he never wanted to do it, but when threatened with exposure over his illegal residency, he gave in. Each week, someone would come to take him home. One of those clients was producer Norman Carey, who eventually brought Valentino to California and secured his role in The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, 1921, the film that made him a legend. Yet in a note discovered after his death, Valentino left behind a haunting confession: "The world calls me their lover. But that first night, I lay still, and no one kissed me at all." The 12th man was Tyrone Power, the face of American cinema in the 1940s. Women adored him, men envied him, but behind the glamour he understood that beauty in Hollywood was never a blessing. It was currency. In 1936, before signing with 20th Century Fox, Power was invited to Palm Springs by an older producer who was later named in FBI files for hosting casting parties disguised as retreats. A staff member recalled how Power was first asked to try on swimwear, and then to try obedience. The very next morning, he was offered a 5-year contract. For years afterward, his schedule was quietly filled by wealthy sponsors whenever he was off set. At the Brown Derby nightclubs, whispers followed him, suggesting that his very presence was a way of paying debts with charm. His close friend, actor Cesar Romero, once said, "Tyrone knew the only way to stay where he was meant protecting the image, even if it meant never speaking the truth." Unlike Power, some, like Montgomery Clift, gave everything away and never escaped the weight of it. The 13th name was Montgomery Clift, the actor with sorrowful eyes, who seemed to carry hidden wounds in every role he played. His gaze often appeared distant, as though he never truly belonged to this world. According to diary notes left by Elizabeth Taylor, Clift once confided to her that, as a young man, a friend had introduced him to a director in exchange for intimacy and a part. When she asked if he regretted it, Clift answered, "No. But each time I remember it, I feel a piece of me die." In 1945, before he was known, Clift accepted a private audition at a Bel Air mansion with director Joshua Logan. After the session, he stayed for 3 days. An elderly maid later recalled that he cried often, but when he finally left, he carried a contract in his hand. Even in later years, he avoided every question about his beginnings. Once, when asked by Variety, he replied only, "I started in theater, and in a few rooms where no one was watching." He lived much of his life in isolation, battled alcohol, and in the end, died with a broken smile. The secrets he carried were buried with him. The 14th name was Tab Hunter, the teen idol who lived with secrets no one could ever know. In the 1950s, his golden looks and all-American charm made him the face of a generation. But at 19, Hunter was arrested at a gay party in Long Beach, a scandal that nearly destroyed his career. He was saved not with money, but with a 5-year contract from an unnamed producer. When later asked about the incident, Hunter only smiled faintly and said, "I did not lose anything. I just had to stay the night with someone I could not refuse." Throughout his peak years, Hunter was forced into staged romances with actresses like Natalie Wood and Debbie Reynolds to conceal his true relationships. In his memoir, he later admitted, "I was never chosen for my acting. I was chosen for something else entirely. I was chosen not for talent, but because I fit the image Hollywood demanded: quiet, beautiful, and willing to play the part." But Tab Hunter was far from the only one forced to live a double life. Another man made millions swoon as a television doctor, yet behind closed doors, his reality was far different. The 15th name was Richard Chamberlain, the star of NBC's 1961 hit series Drive Kildare and the dream of countless fans. On screen, he was the perfect gentleman. Off-screen, he lived in constant fear, terrified that a single photograph could destroy him. A former assistant revealed that every meeting with his lover happened only in his private apartment, with curtains drawn and phones disconnected. Chamberlain was often pressured into midnight auditions in Beverly Hills, sessions where directors and producers cared less about talent and more about obedience. On one occasion, when a co-star suggested they go public, Chamberlain's cold reply was, "If I lose this role because I love you, will you be able to feed me?" For decades, he wore the mask of the flawless star, concealing the truth until he finally confessed, only after retiring, when it no longer mattered. But others, like Troy Donahue, never had time for such masks. With golden hair and a surfer's charm, Donahue was the heartthrob of the 1960s. Yet his fame was built on midnight gatherings and hidden estates. In 1958, he was summoned to a private room where powerful men waited. According to witnesses, he left pale, shaken, and silent. The next day, he received a 7-year contract with Warner Brothers. Later, in his journals, he confessed, "Every time I appeared on screen, I erased a part of myself." His life spiraled into addiction, and he died in solitude in 2001, remembered as much for his pain as his stardom. Van Johnson, once MGM's boy next door, endured similar compromises. Before fame, he slept on warehouse floors, hungry and broke. Director George Cukor discovered him in a diner and took him home, telling him, "I don't need you to act. I just need you to behave." The next day, Johnson had both a screen test and enough money for rent. Years later, he admitted to a friend, "I'm not proud of it. But I didn't want to go back to sleeping on park benches." For George Maharis, the collapse was sudden. Known as Buzz Murdoch in Route 66, he was a face adored by women across America. But in 1967, one headline destroyed him, arrested in a public restroom for indecent conduct. Studios abandoned him overnight, and his career ended in silence. NanVat 19 John Gavin, polished and perfect, carried another secret. He was often driven to discreet midnight meetings with wealthy men, never auditioning for the roles he received. A studio executive once admitted, "He was the mask we used to hide the filth behind the scenes." NanVat 20 not all escaped alive. Ramon Novarro, the silent film legend, was murdered in 1968 by two young hustlers he had called to his home. The scandal revealed years of hidden encounters with directors, politicians, and stars. Once adored, he died alone, his legacy tainted. Leave a comment below and don't forget to subscribe to the channel today. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the upcoming